Hello, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about why living a healthy life is challenging and you are not just sucking at it. All right? Living a healthy, balanced, well life is a challenging thing to do, and you are not just sucking at it. All right, so the reason that I really wanted to talk about this today is because I feel, from my observation of the spirituality, health, wellness, personal growth world, there is obviously this massive market, out there for learning how to live a life where you are going to feel good. Because at the end of the day, this is what we all really want, right? We are doing everything we are doing because we want to feel good. We want to thrive. We want to have a life that feels nourishing and satisfying and fulfilling and gives us pleasure at the end of the day. And when we can sort of understand that that is really what's at the root of everything that we're doing, we can start to put the rest of our lives into better context, and we can start to understand what things we want to interact with in the health, spirituality, personal growth, wellness world, and what kind of things we don't. And we can start to deconstruct all the ways in which we have been sort of indoctrinated and distracted from this real goal that we have of feeling good and being able to live a life that feels fulfilling and rewarding and satisfying and healthy and safe from the manipulation that comes in the spirituality, self-help, personal growth, and wellness worlds. Okay? Because, again, this kind of common desire that we all have to feel good right now in our health, wellness, spirituality, self-help, personal growth world is being so deeply manipulated, and it's being used as a way to keep us stuck in systems that make us feel worse, that don't feel good for us, that keep us in cycles of excessive consumption and excessive production. And generally speaking, again, it's turned into another thing where we feel like we have to live up to expectation. We feel like we have to do good. We feel like we are failing when we're not getting the results that we are wanting, when we're not getting the results that people are saying we should be getting. Rather than being able to look at this pragmatically, rather than being able to be on our own sides and figure out things that are actually going to work for us long term, rather than having like an actual perspective that makes sense in terms of what we actually want and what we actually need, we tend to be continually caught up in this idea that we aren't enough and that we're not doing enough and that we're shameful and that we're guilty and that we're shitty because we don't feel good. Because we're not living these lives that we see on social media or that we see in the wellness world, and we're comparing ourselves to what other people are saying that they're doing and that they're achieving and that they're being in their lives, and we're feeling like we're failing and we're feeling like we're not doing enough and we're feeling like we're never accomplishing what we should be accomplishing and all of these things, rather, again, than being able to understand what it is we actually want and why we're doing all of these things, and then being able to discern from there what's actually helpful and what isn't. Okay? So if we can just take a step back and really look at the health and the wellness world for how it's functioning right now, and the way that most of us feel when we interact with the health, wellness, spirituality, and personal growth world, that's going to help us contextualize what I'm trying to talk about and what I'm trying to get us to help us understand with this talk. Okay? So a lot of the time, right, we log on to social media, we watch YouTube videos, we listen to podcasts, we do all these things. And we're listening to these people who are constantly telling us that there is a way to optimize our lives, that there is a way to change our mindsets, to alter the way that we, practice our nourishment or movement or how we treat our bodies, that there's a way to approach our relationships and the people that we interact with, that there's a way to interact with money and work and productivity that will lead us into this state of like permanent bliss, right? Our health, wellness, spirituality, personal growth influencers in all of these different categories are selling us all sorts of different things with the same kind of I know what you want and I'm trying to get it to you underpinning, which is you want to feel good, right? You want to feel like you have ease and joy in feeling good in your life. And I'm going to give you the tools, I'm going to give you the insights, I'm going to give you the resources that if you just do these things, if you just make these choices, if you just practice these practices, you are going to have what you want. You are going to have a mindset that, you're never depressed and you're never anxious and you're always regulated and you're connected to God and you feel amazing all the time. I'm going to give you the technique of, here's what I eat in a day and here's how I move in a day. And if you follow all of these things, you're going to optimize your body. You do your cold plunge, you do your sauna, you do your, vitamin IVs, you take all your supplements, you eat this specific diet, you do whatever. And your body is going to heal. If you're sick, your body is going to magically change if you don't like the way that it looks or you don't like the way that it's acting. And you can optimize that and optimize your body into a state of like permanent health and amazingness, right? If you follow these tools, if you follow this advice, if you follow this way of relating or this way of speaking or this way of communicating or this way of, changing your inner world and changing your inner self so that you are attractive in this way, you're going to have all the relationships you want. You're going to have the connection you want. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel loved. You're going to feel seen. You're going to feel like you're able to be your authentic self and you're able to be with other people who are their authentic selves. And it's going to be this perfect, awesome thing. And same with the money thing, right? If you just change your manifestation mindset, if you just figure out what your passion is and figure out what your purpose is, and if you're living in alignment with God and all of these things, you will have easy income, you're going to feel amazing, you're going to have all the resources and all the safety and security and luxury that you could ever dream of, and it will come to you easily if you just follow these steps, right? Over and over and over again, we're being sold. You want to feel good in this area of your life. Here are the practices that if you follow them and if you do them right, I guarantee you're going to have this perfect outcome. And if you don't get the perfect outcome, if you don't get the thing that you want, if you don't achieve perfect wellness and perfect balance in all of these things, you must have done it wrong. You did it wrong. You didn't do it for long enough. There was something wrong with you. You should have done it in a different way. Or go to my up level, go to the next level, do the next thing. You just didn't do it hard enough. You need the next course and the next book and the next tool. Or we are kind of trained to just sort of teacher and guru hop and to find another leader and to find another person who's going to give us the actual tools or the actual secrets. So we do the one thing with relationships on this side and that doesn't work, so then we switch to, right? Like, so say we're practicing open relationships and we're doing the polyamory thing and that doesn't work, so then we switch really hard to like pure monogamy and more stereotypical gender roles and that doesn't work, so then we try and do something that's sort of in the middle and you see what I'm saying? There's just this constant, you want to feel good, you don't feel good right now in that, and that's okay because I can sell you the program, I can sell you the way of being, I can sell you the thing that you should be doing. And if you just do it right, you will get what you want. And then the kind of more overarching narrative, the larger picture of this, is this idea that we should be optimizing our lives. That all of us should be living this perfect life where if someone took a video of our day-to-day being and they recorded our, this is a day in my life, it would be this beautiful wake up in the morning, you do your morning routine, you do your morning journaling, you drink your lemon water, you do your workout, you have your perfect, meal, you go to your job, that's like your perfect job, and you are interacting with all these people that you love, and you're making tons of money, and you're feeling amazing, and then you come home and you maybe have some social time or some relaxed time, you have maybe a hobby that you do, and then you have your perfect dinner and your skincare routine at night, and then you have your spiritual practice, and then you go to bed and you do it all over the next day. Like literally there's kind of this idea that we should be living this kind of life, and that anyone who isn't living that like perfect, I have it all figured out, I feel good in every area of my life, I'm thriving and making all the right choices in every area of my life. Anyone who doesn't have that, there's a good, right? You're failing. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it bad. This is the reason you don't feel good about yourself. This is the reason you don't feel good in your life. And don't worry, because I can sell you the fix. I can sell you the tool. And your life, again, is supposed to look this certain way. And if it does look this certain way, this way that you feel like you could put on social media, that you're succeeding and you're a good person and you're doing it right. And if for any reason it doesn't look like that, right? If you have anxiety, depression, mental issues that make it so that, you wake up in the morning and you're just exhausted. You don't feel good. You don't have your morning routine. You get up, you have a cup of coffee, you try to scramble something together to eat, and then you go to work. And you can't do these perfect spiritual practices. There's something wrong with you, right? It's not that you don't feel good and that's what we should be concerned about. It's you're not making the right choices. You're not doing the right things. And that is why you are suffering. If we have anything wrong with our bodies, anything at all, where we don't have perfect health, the world is going to tell you, you are making the wrong choices. That you can have optimal health, you can have optimal thriving, no matter what's going on with your body. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. You're failing. You're not making the right choices. If you don't have the right kind of relationship, if you don't have the kind of relationship you want, if you're lonely, if you're fighting with your partner, if you don't have a partner, if you don't know if you and your partner are compatible because things are really difficult a lot of the times, if you don't have this big social life, you don't have a bunch of friends, you are doing something wrong. You are failing on some level. You need my workshop on conscious communication or this or that or this or that. Over and 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 over again, we are being sold this idea that optimization is possible, that optimization is the ideal, that this is what optimization looks like, right? This is what you're supposed to do, and this is what your life is supposed to look like. And if you can do all of these things, and if you can make all of these right choices, that means you're doing it right. That means you're succeeding. That is how you know you can approve of yourself, and the world would approve of you. You see? So there's already this disconnection between how it actually feels to do all of these things, the results we're actually getting from doing these things if we're doing them, and how it looks and what we should be doing. And then again, most of us walk around feeling shame and guilt and like we're failing when we don't feel good in our lives, versus being able to feel, okay, I don't feel good in my life. What do I need to feel supported so I can figure out a way of making myself feel better and or seeing where some of these things may be out of my control and how can I support myself within that. That is the huge, huge red flag disconnection that I really want to point out here as being what is pretty much wrong with our spirituality, self-help, personal growth world right now, and how it's leading us in a direction that is away from what is actually going to help us feel good in this life. It's drawing us into this idea that optimizing our lives is the expectation. It's drawing us into this idea that when you have perfect health, when you have ideal relationships, when you have the, career of your dreams and you're making all the money, when you're optimally mentally healthy and you can be regulated all the time and you feel good mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, that's what makes you a good person. That's what means that you are having success, that you are good, that you are pure, that you are righteous, that you are allowed to approve of yourself because you are doing all the right things and you are feeling the way you should feel, and therefore you are good enough. Right? It's not really even about how you actually feel. It's not really actually about meeting you where you're at with what's going on in your life, with where you need support and your individual specific situation and how you can best support yourself within that. It has nothing to do with that. Most people are selling you what they're selling you from the idea that this is how you should be in order to be approved of, in order to be being a good person. These things have been turned into moral virtues and a way that we judge each other. Instead of a pragmatic, I want to be able to feel good in my life and have a nice life and maybe be of service to others in some way because I am okay. This is the massive disconnect that is driving all of us crazy, I think. And that is fueling the health and wellness spirituality machine that is not actually about making us feel better, but is actually just about more consumerism and keeping us in a state of constantly feeling inadequate and like we're not good enough and like we're doing the wrong things, so that we will keep overproducing, keep overconsuming, continue to be disconnected from ourselves and our humanity, continue to be disconnected from the world around us, continue to be disconnected from what we actually value and what we want, and any of these actually healthy things. Because we're so focused on trying to do the right thing with our wellness, and we're so caught in feeling like we're pieces of shit because we aren't, that we're completely missing the point. Okay? So I hope we can start to take a step back and really see this right now. Our wellness, spirituality, personal growth, and self-help worlds are completely geared around the idea that if you are doing these things and you're doing them perfectly, that's what makes you a good person. That is what makes you worthy of love. That is what makes you worthy of being able to approve of yourself, being able to not be ashamed of yourself, to feel like you're doing it right, and that is what makes you worthy of the love that you want in general. Right? Because a lot of us, again, aren't recognizing that at our core, deep, deep down, what we really want right, is to feel loved and to feel safe. To feel like we can live how we want to live. We can express ourselves. We can exist without being attacked, without being shamed, without being blamed. That we can live how we want to live without feeling so alone and so isolated. We want to feel loved. We want to feel connected. We want to feel safe to be ourselves. Again, right? Like, if we really boil all of this down, most of the time when I work with people and we look at their fears and we look at the things that they are kind of like obsessed with optimizing in themselves, right? When people are just completely wrapped up in trying to fix and heal and change their bodies over and over and over again. And they're horrified of aging, or they're horrified of weight gain, or they're horrified of whatever they're, having illness and all of that stuff. Of course, there's the level of like physical discomfort that comes from illness and how it impacts your life, and there's that stuff. But when we're kind of like in this state of like obsessively trying to control our bodies and feeling like our bodies are never good enough, and whenever we're in pain and whenever we feel like life is going wrong, we can always scapegoat onto the body. If I could just fix my body, if I could just change my body, if I could just heal my body, I would feel better. When we do the questioning work of like, okay, why? What do you really want if you were to optimize your health, if you were to optimize your figure, if you were to optimize and feel like you were perfectly exactly where you should be with your body? What is it that you feel like you would get? The answer pretty much always boils down to, I would be good enough, I would be lovable, and I wouldn't be so alone. It's not even really about wanting the body or wanting the whatever we think we want. It's that we think that is the avenue through which we are going to get the love, acceptance, safety, and approval that we actually want. When we say we want to optimize our relationships, we want to have this perfect connection, we want to have this partner, we want to have these multiple partners, we want to have this great social life, and we're constantly feeling like we're failing because our relationships aren't like that. The thing that hurts about that is that it makes us feel like we're alone, like we're isolated, like we can't just be safe to be ourselves and to be accepted and to be loved. When we want to optimize our career and get to this point where we're making all the money and we're doing all the things that, again, the thing we're really afraid of is that if I don't do these things, I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to have enough provision. I'm not going to have enough safety. Right? And so we need to understand that as human beings who were socialized and raised the way that we've been socialized and raised, connection, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling loved by other people, and safety and provision and being able to be our true full selves have been completely knit together in our minds and our spirits and in our bodies. Right? We grew up in that temporary codependent relationship with our caregivers, where we did not have autonomy over ourselves. We did not have control over our own circumstances. We were not able to get to a place where we could identify our own needs and we could meet them and we could just live that life. Rather, we were dependent upon our caregivers to love us, to understand us, and then to meet our needs. And the one thing we had control over was our behavior and how we perceived that behavior either did or didn't cause our caregivers to care for us. It was about being good enough and measuring up to expectation and being who we needed to be to a degree, right? And to varying degrees, depending on the security of the attachment that you had growing up, depending on how functional or dysfunctional your childhood was, depending on how emotionally regulated and available your caregivers were for you, will determine how secure you felt that you could be yourself, you could express how you needed to express, you could do what you needed to do, and that you were still going to be loved and therefore provided for. You were going to have safety or not. And the more you didn't have safety, the more you could not rely on your caregivers to understand you and to meet your needs. Now again, this does not mean that your parents were necessarily, or your caregivers were necessarily intentionally neglectful if they weren't able to meet your needs, that they were bad people, that they were, terrible caregivers that you should cut out of your life and that you should hate. Sometimes our caregivers literally weren't able to meet our needs. They were actually, some of us grew up, we didn't have a lot of money. We weren't in a safe environment. We were raised by single caregivers or caregivers who were stretched really thin, or we had lots of siblings, or whatever it was. They had a lot of trauma. They had a lot of stuff going on in their lives. They weren't able to be there for us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Whether it was intentional, whether it was unintentional, whether it was abuse, whether it was neglect, whether it was they could have done better, whether it was they literally couldn't have done anything different, it's not their fault, it doesn't really matter. Because the effect that it had on you as a child who can't understand that, who can't see the complexity of that, right? You did not have your adult perspective that you have now, where you can understand where your caregivers were coming from and that they were humans who are flawed themselves and all of this stuff. All you knew at the time was, if I'm not getting my needs met, I need to figure out a way to alter myself so that I can become good enough again so that they will meet my needs. That's how we perceived it. We perceived that our caregivers were capable of giving us anything and everything we wanted, and we needed to see them that way in order to feel secure as children. We needed to see our caregivers as gods who were completely able to provide for us. And we needed to believe that in order to feel safe, because we depended on them for everything. And from our perspective, they did look like God who could do anything. Yes? So if they weren't giving us what we wanted and what we needed, if they were abandoning us, if they were shaming us, if they were guilting us, if they were doing any of these things, this was making us feel like we weren't going to get our needs met. We weren't safe. And we had to change and alter and fix ourselves in order to become good enough and worthy of love and worthy of acceptance and worthy of their connection. And it was feeling connected to them and them feeling connected to us that made us feel like we were going to get our needs met. You see? So we have this deep-rooted belief in our bodies that we learned. This was the first lesson we ever learned from reality as children, is that provision comes from being loved and accepted and approved of. That safety comes from love, acceptance, and being approved of. That the ability to be who and what we want to be and to be safe to express ourselves the way we want to express ourselves comes from being good enough. Being loved and approved of by the people on the outside. Doing all the right things, jumping through all the right hoops, so that everyone will love and accept and approve of us And that's what leads to us being able to be ourselves and express ourselves and get our needs met. And most of us are still walking around with that being the base understanding. If I just live up to expectation enough, if I just do all the right things, if I just perfect myself, I will then be good enough. And if I'm good enough, I'm going to get my needs met. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to have connection. Does this make sense to everybody? Do I have any questions, comments, concerns as we're going along here? Right? We need to understand that this is really at the core. That we want to be able to express ourselves fully and have our needs met. And we firmly believe that it is through being good enough and doing all the right things that we are going to get that. And the wellness, spirituality, personal growth, and self-help world capitalize on that by constantly selling us protocols, constantly selling us examples of what it looks like to be a good person. Okay, and then also on top of that, so we're constantly being roped into this feeling that if I don't have the optimal life, if I don't feel good, it's because I'm doing something wrong. I'm failing to be who and what I should be. I'm failing, right? It's not, I'm not being supported. It's not, where am I not getting my need met? It's not, how is what I'm doing or, the way that I'm living or the systems I'm living in, how are these things not supportive of me? How am I not, right? Where am I actually hurting? Where is there an actual lack of something? And how can I figure out how to fill that? It's, how am I failing to do the right thing? What is wrong with me? What is inadequate about me? What is not good enough about me? That's making it so that I'm not getting what I want and what I need and I don't feel good. When we don't feel good, most of us pretty much automatically go into shame, blame, and guilt. Or, again, when we're not able to live the perfect routine, when we're not able to keep up with all the wellness and the spirituality and the goal setting and all this stuff, we feel like we failed. We feel like we sucked. For a lot of us, right, we think, if I couldn't do all my practices today, I may as well just do none of them because I already failed. If I couldn't do all of my things, I didn't eat the perfect meal today, so I may as well just fuck it for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week, for the rest of the month. I fell off the wagon with whatever habit I was doing. So I suck and I failed. And there's something wrong with me. Like, that's our mindset. Or I can't stick to my healthy habits. I can't, especially this, right? Especially the whole, I can't keep on top of everything all the time. Right? I'm not able to have the perfect relationship and the perfect career and the perfect body and the perfect house and all of these things. And because of that, I suck. I am inadequate. I am not doing good enough. Because all of these things are the expectation. All of these things are what make you a good enough person. All of these things are what is required to feel good in life. And if you don't have perfection in all of these areas, and again, a lot of us don't even think of ourselves as being perfectionists. We don't even think we're demanding that much of ourselves. Right? We're like, why should it feel so overwhelming to have a full-time job and have a social life and exercise and eat good food and keep my apartment clean and do some spirituality? That just seems like everyone should be able to do that. And we don't think we're being perfectionistic. We don't think we're having too high of an expectation of ourselves. When in reality, the way that the world is set up right now, the way that we are constantly being demanded of, that is like unrealistic for almost all of us. And yet it is being sold as the baseline expectation for being able to feel good about yourself, for being able to feel like you are then acceptable and you can show yourself to people. So if we can't keep up with that, we feel ashamed, we feel guilty, we feel inadequate, and then it starts us on this cycle of self-improvement, and we're doing all the courses and we're doing all the things and we're constantly trying to fix ourselves and change ourselves, and we're feeling like we're failing every time we're not getting it perfect. And this is when we're going to really notice, right? Like our coping mechanisms, the ways that we numb, the way that we escape. So our scrolling on social media, our overeating, our ways that we sabotage ourselves seemingly in relationships. We are social for a little while and then we totally shut down. Right? The kind of backlash that happens from trying to be so disciplined and so on it. Or even the backlash that happens from trying to imagine ourselves being that disciplined and doing all the right things and doing all this stuff. And the backlash that happens. As being, again, that backlash, we think that scrolling on social media, the getting lost in the Netflix, the getting in the big dramatic fights over and over and over again, the overeating, the not exercising, the falling off the wagon for weeks at a time. We think that's the problem. That's the thing that's wrong with us. If we could just fix that, if we could just optimize that out of ourselves, if we could spiritualize that out of ourselves, if we could get rid of that so we could be disciplined and do all the right things, that's what's going to make us feel good. Right? And then it's this loop that never ends. The more we try to be disciplined, the more we fall off the wagon, the more we feel guilty, the more we feel shameful, the more we try to get on the wagon, do all the right things, the more we fail, the more we feel like we suck. And then we're sold over and over and over again, here's the solution, here's the solution, here's the solution. More optimization, more wellness, more spirituality, more programs, more doing this, more. And it's just round and round and round, and we never feel good enough. Right? Because, again, we've completely been divorced from the point of all of these things, from what we actually want, from what actually is reasonable, and all of this. And then, like I say, we are neglecting to understand that in real reality, wellness, number one, looks different on all of us. There is no way of telling if someone is living their version of an optimally well life by looking at them. And as hard as this is for us to accept as a culture, the way we have judged one another as being all about how it looks on the surface is totally messing us up. You cannot tell by looking at someone's lifestyle routine if they are mentally well, if they are physically well, if they are financially well, if they are actually good in their relationships. You cannot tell. Because at the end of the day, what feels good and what feels optimal for each one of us, again, is different. For some people, the most ideal relationship is an open, polyamorous relationship. And that is what feels good for them, and that is what feels comfortable, and that is what feels like the most expression and safety and whatever it is. For others, It's a very, you know, traditional gender roles. The man does this, the woman does that. We identify as men and women, and this is what feels good for us. There's no way of telling from the outside, based on what the relationship looks like, if they are doing what they should be doing or not. Because there is no one right way to have relationships. There is no one right way to socialize. There is no one right way to be in a committed partnership. Do you share your finances or not? Well, that depends on the values of each person. Do you have sexual relations with other people outside the relationship or not? Depends on the two people or the three people or the five people in the dynamic. There is no way of telling from the outside if someone is living an optimally well relationship experience based on what it looks like. There is no optimal morning routine. There's no such thing as what we should all be doing when we wake up in the morning to set ourselves up for a good day. And you cannot tell by looking at someone's morning routine if what they're doing is actually supporting them and where they are right now or not. It could be completely idealistic. They wake up, they journal, they drink their lemon water, they do their meditation, they do their movement practice, and look how beautiful and perfect and Instagrammable that is. And they could be totally miserable the whole time. They could be fighting with all sorts of feelings that they're stuffing down with this perfect routine. They could be absolutely feeling like shit doing that perfect morning routine. And you'd have no idea. Where someone might wake up, roll out of bed, have a cup of coffee, stare out the window for 10 minutes, take a shower, and then go to work. And that could be perfectly great for them. That's how they start their day. They're fine with that. There is no ideal in any of this. You can't tell by looking at someone if they're optimally living their healthy life. Because we all have different ways that our bodies work. Some of us are chronically ill, and we are never going to look socially acceptable. We can have the perfect diet and the perfect routine and do everything right and still have symptoms and flare-ups and things that we can't do. And the world is going to look at us and say, you're failing, you suck, you should be able to be perfectly, optimally healthy and look like it. And because you aren't, you must be making bad choices. You're not responsible. Therefore, you're not worthy of love and you're not good enough. And then we live in a world where this does become a way in which we are allowed to criticize and judge and disrespect and reject other people. This is how we categorize each other. This is how we determine if other people are worthy of love or not, are worthy of respect or not, based on how well we think they're making choices, how well we think they're living up to this societal expectation of optimization. And it works perfectly for the system. This is what we need to understand. It's not for us. Most things in the wellness, spirituality, personal growth, and self-help world are not actually for us. Rather, it's for the corporations and the people who are running society to have more and more profit and more separation and disconnection from our humanity in society. Because the more we are willing to be in a constant state of self-rejection, the more we are willing to hate ourselves, to believe that we don't feel good because we suck, to believe that there is some optimal way of being, that if we are not experiencing how we want life, how we want to feel, that we are failing, and that the answer to that is more consumption or more production, right? Buying more things, investing in more programs, doing more of the work, or working harder, doing more, contributing more, whatever it is. If we can't be convinced that either one of those two things are the single solution to every one of our problems, our economy collapses, right? Because everything, again, is sold to us on this idea that if you're optimally producing and optimally consuming, you are going to have an optimal life, and that's what makes you good enough. You see, it's not for us. And this, again, is what I'm saying, is it separates us from our humanity. Because the more we are deep in our own shame, and our own feeling like we're not getting our needs met, we're not feeling good, we're not feeling satisfied in life, and we're constantly shaming and blaming and beating ourselves up, and looking at ourselves and being like, I'm failing here, and I'm failing there, and I'm not doing good enough here, I'm not going to do enough, we are then going to project that out onto everyone around us, whether we want to or not. If you spend any time in any social media comment section, you're going to notice so many comments. You don't look healthy. You don't look good. You shouldn't be doing this. You aren't that. You aren't this. You aren't that. Diagnoses over and above. People giving unsolicited advice. People just being mean to each other. Writing each other off. And it happens in regular society. How we determine how we're going to treat somebody has so much to do with how they look, where they fall on the social spectrum of income. And we dehumanize ourselves and we dehumanize each other based on how optimal someone looks or doesn't look. And that is societally acceptable. Because, again, the big thing is the ways that our systems are set up are not set up for us to have optimally well lives. Because in real reality, what an actual human being needs to feel good, we need adequate food, water, shelter, the base needs to be met. We don't live in a world where that is guaranteed for most of us. Like, just bottom line, basic that. So many of us are living in scarcity and not enough and insecurity because our systems are set up as every man for himself. And the people who are winning just hoard and hoard and hoard and hoard and hoard for themselves at the expense through exploiting everyone else. We don't have that for most people in the middle and down. And yet we're looking at these people and being like, you are not making the right choices, you are not doing the right things, and therefore you are worthy of being judged and disrespected and, just exploited. Because you're of a lesser quality than everyone else. We need access to fresh air outside nature. That is less and less and less available for most of us. We need to be able to be connected to some other people, other human beings, a community of support that we feel seen, loved, and heard, that we feel like we can contribute something to. We are more and more and more being isolated and individualized and nuclear familyized. And if you don't have a significant other and 2.5 kids, you like have no one. Because everyone else is either partnered up or working all the time, or they have their kids, and that's it. This whole thing is completely destabilizing for our humanity. And yet it is sold as the right way to be. We need leisure time that's actually fulfilling. Right? So we need a balance of work that feels like it's actually doing something. So even this, right? Most of us don't work jobs where we feel like we're actually accomplishing something. For so long, for human history, labor was a means to an end. We did stuff and we could like practically see, I'm building a house and then I get to live in the house. There's a purpose to that. I go and I collect food so I can have food. There's a purpose for that. We're laboring as a means to an end. And then we could tell when was enough and when was too much. We didn't need to overwork, and we could tell when we were overworking because we had too much. We didn't need to be doing that much. Now, we live in such a disconnected culture that most of us are doing all of these things for the bottom line of a corporation, and we don't even see the results of our work. We don't even see what we're doing. It's like there's no purpose in it, and there's no whatever, because it's so much a part of this obsessive production consumption machine. And it doesn't feel good. And work has been turned into a virtue, something that makes us good or bad, versus being something that's pragmatic, and that's incredibly confusing. So we need work with a purpose, and we need rest with a purpose. We need leisure activities that are actually fulfilling and feel good and feel nourishing. And we are not connected to that at all. Right? We have go to work, do your thing, feel completely disconnected from what you're doing most of the time, feel overworked and overstressed, underpaid, go home, numb out. We don't feel good. And that's how the system is set up. So we're all fighting this battle of being hyper individualistic, being totally alone, doing things for money and all this stuff that don't feel good for us. And then we come home and all we can really do is numb out because we are trained to be disconnected from our emotions and disconnected from our bodies and disconnected from our actual feelings. Because if we were to connect to them, we'd be able to be like, whoa, this doesn't feel good, not because of me, but because of how this is all set up. And we wonder why we feel like shit. And then again, we're sold that the solution is more of the system. More consuming wellness, spirituality, personal growth stuff, more production, more individualization, more individual choices. In a world where most of us are overworked and overstressed and overstimulated, and we have no idea what we want and what we need and what we value. And we wonder why we don't feel good. And then we feel like blame, shame, and guilt. Instead of feeling like, whoa, okay, I'm just not getting my needs met. Because society isn't set up for us to get our needs met. Society is set up for us to feel constantly in a state of competition, in a state of lack, in a state of scarcity, in a state of not enough, in a state of shame, blame, and guilt, so that we can be sold more, so that we can ignore the issues that we could actually be, helping to solve, so that we don't recognize when we have enough, because enough is never enough in our culture. Remember that. Even if you have the perfect routine, even if you have there's always another level. There's always another thing. There's always someone you can be comparing yourself to that you feel like you're failing. Everybody walks around with imposter syndrome. Everybody, no matter how qualified you are, feels like they're not qualified to be doing what they're doing. They're not good enough. Are they worthy of love? This is what's really going on. This is why all of my work is about you moving through shame, blame, and guilt. Because it's these shame, blame, and guilt things. This I am failing, I am not doing good enough, I am not good. The reason I'm failing, the reason I don't feel good, the reason I'm not thriving is because I suck on some level. That is the main thing that separates us from reality. This is why in the mystery school, there's an entire course on working through shame, blame, and guilt. Because if we can't see through that, we'll never be able to see what the real truth is. We're constantly going to be able to be sold this idea of optimization and that wellness is easy and that you're failing if you don't have it. And we're going to keep buying it until we're able to be like, no, what is the point of this? Why am I doing this? Is society even set up for that? Are doing the things that I'm being told I need to be doing actually going to get me that result? Why do I not feel good enough? Why would having the perfect wellness optimization life actually make me happy? Do I even know? This is what this is really about. Our society is not set up for us to be well. It's set up for us to be over-consuming, over-producing, ultra-independent, disconnected from our humanity, so that we will continue to contribute to bottom lines of people who are already very, very wealthy. That's what our society is set up for. And the health, spirituality, personal growth, and wellness worlds, generally speaking, are playing that game too. They're just giving us more and more reason and excuse to judge and shame and guilt and blame one another as we do that to ourselves, so that we're even more disconnected and less connected to what we actually want and what we actually need, and more invested in following these perfect external things and feeling like we're failing when we're not. Right? Like the idea that like I didn't do an hour of meditation today, so I shouldn't do it at all. Okay, but if the point of your meditation is to help you feel good, not to do it right, is 10 minutes better than 0? Yes. But if we're doing it to measure up, then it's like, why would we bother to do it at all? And you can see how it's just like, well, then why are you doing it? If you're doing it to measure up and be good enough, you'll never be good enough. There's always going to be someone who thinks that wasn't enough meditation. People don't even see it. Who's watching you? Whose expectation are you even trying to live up to with your wellness life? When you feel like you failed, who are you failing? Why are you doing it? Like, we need to take a step back and really actually assess, does this make me feel good or not? Because if the answer is, I'm doing this because it makes me feel good, that's the only reason we should be doing any of these things. I'm doing this because it improves my life in some way. So if I can't do it for an hour, but I can do it for 5 minutes, that's still an improvement. And we should never feel like we failed or passed, because that is so not the point. You see what I'm saying? Like, it makes no sense to do your meditation to be good enough. But that's how most of us are living, because we're so disconnected from what is the actual point of this. Your health, wellness, spirituality, personal growth, optimization of your life. The point of that is for you. So if you are not able to keep up with all of these things, and if trying to keep on all of these things makes you feel worse, then you shouldn't be trying to keep up with all of these things. Because that's not the point. The point is to make you feel good. Right? So we need to take a step back from all of this and recognize why we're doing these things. So number one, what do you actually want? What do you actually value? Where are you actually at? And what actually feels good and nourishing for you based on where you're at? What is optimal for you in terms of what you actually have control over and what you don't? That is how you design a wellness plan that works for you. That's why in the mystery school, there's no morning routine that you follow. There's no diet plan. There's no this is what it looks like when you're enlightened. There's just tools to help you connect with yourself, to the you that actually exists right here, right now, and all the mess and all the chaos that is there, so that you can just say, okay, what is the most supportive lifestyle I can live right now? That's it. That's the point. And whatever that looks like for you is what it looks like. If you were to move from a place of how can I support myself instead of how can I optimize myself, right? And then start to face the fear of like, well, if I don't optimize myself, I'm never going to be loved, approved of, acceptable, and worthy, and then who's going to love me? That's a whole nother thing we need to deal with. If you're afraid to let go of your perfect choices, or the idea that if you optimize yourself and do all the right things, if you're afraid of letting go of the idea that that's going to perfect your life, I challenge you to look for what you're actually wanting. What do you think that's going to give you? If you were to perfect your wellness routine, what do you think is the actual outcome of that? Do you actually feel good on the way? Or is it all stress and achievement, and the only thing that feels good about it is that you did it and you feel like you did good enough? Or are you actually getting something out of the practice itself? What is the point? Why are you doing this? This is what I want you to really start to focus on. How are the systems around you supporting or not supporting you? How can you better support yourself within these shitty systems? Where are you judging yourself as inadequate when really you're hurting? And what do you need? Anytime you feel shame, blame, and guilt, we need to question that. Your wellness routine is not about doing something that looks right on the surface. Because you can perfect it, and you still probably will not feel how you want to feel. Because that's not what it's about. So I hope that this helped, right? This is not what this is about. Doing the perfect thing isn't going to get you the perfect love and safety and provision you want. It's just another means to keeping us trapped in this consumption spiral that never ends. You shouldn't feel good enough or not good enough based on your wellness routine, based on the results that you're getting. That has nothing to do with your worthiness or your adequacy. How do you actually feel if you look past I'm failing and not doing good enough, shame, blame, and guilt? What's actually in there? If what you're feeling is not shame, blame, and guilt, what are you actually feeling? Where are your needs not actually being met? How is it not that you're not good enough? These are the questions we want to start to ask ourselves. Okay, so I have lots more content on my YouTube channel all about this. Check out the mystery school. one-on-one coaching, all that stuff. That's what all of this is about. It's about separating from the delusion of living up to expectation and making it all this external thing, to actually being able to connect to ourselves. What you value, what you want, and what you need, and what's actually going to make you feel better. And how do we do that within our systems? The reality of where we are, the reality of the systems, why this is so challenging, and what is actually optimal for us right here, right now, that may not look anything like what the Instagram influencers tell us we're supposed to look like. There is no perfection. There is no way that it looks. It's different for all of us. And it should be about how it feels, not about what it looks like. Okay? Okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. And until then.